the man who kicks us off every single day here on NBC Sports on Peacock and wraps it up with Pro Football Talk Live as well as PFT PM, Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Mike?
Rich, I'm doing great. Here's how crazy the weekend was. We spent 2 hours talking about Week 12 earlier today, Chris Sims and I.
Yep.
And we did not mention at any point in 120 minutes the firing of Lions coach Matt Patricia and GM Bob Quinn, or the firing of Jaguars GM Dave Caldwell. Just didn't even mention it. Perfect news dump. The ultimate weekend to fire a coach or a GM, and it goes completely unnoticed because there's so much else going on.
There's so much else going on. Let's start with the Denver Broncos situation, and I'd love for you to clear up what many people have, I think, conflated and confused as to, why would the NFL not push the game because so many quarterbacks go down? I know you know what the protocols are and what the rules that were agreed to before the season and what the latest might be. So lay it all out for me right here, Mike. Go for it.
Well, Rich, there was a time before the season where it was believed that in certain circumstances, if a team, for example, has no healthy offensive linemen, they're all on the COVID list or otherwise injured, or no quarterbacks, or some other competitive reason for postponing a game, that's when the commissioner would convene this external advisory panel that was put together as an alternative to the competition committee, because there would be conflicts of interest galore if you have current competition committee members making these decisions, that would be fair game, that games potentially would be postponed simply because, hey, we've got no healthy offensive linemen. In October, the league decided, and this was an ownership move, that that's not how it's going to work. Competitive issues will not drive these decisions. If you don't have guys ready to play, that's on you. There's enough roster flexibility this year, 53 guys on the active roster, 16 on the practice squad. You should have enough players to play, and at some level, it's your responsibility to ensure that your players stay on the right side of the virus. So for the Broncos, when Jeff Driscoll tests positive, when the Broncos, and actually this falls into the no good deed goes unpunished file, the Broncos found surveillance footage from their quarterback meeting room. They saw that there was a moment, or maybe longer, but not for the entire meeting, when guys didn't have their masks up. They sent it to the league. And when they heard back from the league said they're all knocked out for tomorrow's game. And the Broncos had basically 24 hours to figure out what they were going to do. But that's how it works. And the Broncos lobbied aggressively to get the game delayed a day or two so they could get their quarterbacks back who had not tested positive, were just on this COVID-19 reserve list. The league said, no, we're not going to do it. The game is going forward. The contrast is the Ravens situation, an uncontained outbreak where the league still didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went, whether the transmissions were still happening. They weren't going to let the Ravens back into the facility. They weren't going to put them on the field until they know that it's over. And they still haven't concluded that it's over. Tuesday night's game could still get moved. But that's the difference. Competitive reasons will never postpone a game. Reasons related to an uncontained outbreak, that's when the NFL, at this point, will say we're going to slide a game back a day or two or longer.
So what is the status right now of twofold, the quarterback's room in Denver, and then that Tuesday night game, and thus the pushed Monday night game, Thursday night game, the Monday for the Ravens? What's the current status of both of those situations, Mike?
Well, in Denver, it's just a matter of the procedures unfolding that would get the guys back who didn't test positive. There's the two levels of COVID-19 reserve list. You test positive, you're knocked out for at least a week, week and a half. You get put on it because you had close contact with someone who's positive. You can come back in as short as 5 days, and they should get their guys back, barring a positive test by any of them, whether it's Drew Lock or Brett Rippon or Blake Bortles. Those guys should be back. My understanding was today, possibly tomorrow, either way in time for next week's game, Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. As it relates to the Ravens, look, we went from Thursday, we went to Sunday, now we're at Tuesday. They were assembled in the facility, properly spaced, at 9:25 a.m. Eastern this morning, waiting for word from the NFL as to whether or not they could have a 9:30 a.m. walkthrough. The league said, no, can't do it. Postponed, and I saw Albert Breer reported until 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is specifically relevant, Rich, because by then the Ravens will have their daily PCR off-site testing results back. It depends on how close you are to a laboratory. The Ravens are close to a laboratory. They get theirs late afternoon, early evening. So I think the NFL wants to see, are there more positives today? And I think, and who knows, I don't want to make bad assumptions, but I assume if there's more positives today, no walkthrough. I don't know what that means about the game tomorrow night, but everything is still tenuous. It's still hanging in the balance. Yes, they were back in the facility last night on a voluntary basis for conditioning, but no practice yet, no green light yet to practice. And even though the game is still technically on, I sense that there's still a chance the game, based upon results of these tests today and tomorrow, the game could still end up being off.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. Pro Football Talk Live, Pro Football, PFT PM, all of it here on NBC Sports on Peacock. What's the plan if this game does get pushed, or any? Obviously, you're seeing it's getting worse in the country. I mean, December is going to be a white knuckler. December starts, as we know, Tuesday. So what's the plan for the NFL for a possible Week 18? I'm hearing about bubbles for the playoffs. What are you hearing about all that right now, Mike?
I wish they would just get into a bubble right now. And I really do think it's a matter of collective bargaining where you've got labor and management staring each other down. Management doesn't want to ask because then the union will say, what's in it for us? You have to make a concession. You're asking our players to abandon their families for the rest of the season and live in a hotel. That's a significant change to working conditions. We need something in return. The league doesn't want to give them something in return. That's how collective bargaining goes. And the union doesn't want to blink on their own and just say, well, the hell with it. We're risking losing game checks if games are lost and never played. Let's volunteer to go into a hotel. And I feel like they're just waiting for that one moment where the walls cave in and both sides say, screw it, we're going to put everybody in a hotel for the rest of the season. I'd like to think they'd come to an agreement before the walls cave in, but this may be one where the walls need to cave in, Rich. And Week 18 is something the NFL has been resisting. And it kind of hit me today why they're resisting. If you would move Ravens-Steelers to Week 18 right now, well, there goes the buffer for the Ravens and the Steelers. What if Bills-Steelers can't be played next Sunday night? Does that game just disappear? Because obviously the Steelers can't play two games Week 18. How do you decide which game takes precedence? Do you play Bills-Steelers Week 18 and scrap Ravens-Steelers? How do you do that rock, paper, scissors analysis based upon the total number of games that would get moved to Week 18? I've heard from a couple of different people there's maybe an idea that if they would ever pull that ripcord on Week 18, it wouldn't just be for a game or two. It would be throw in the towel on a full week and move that week to Week 18. Now, I don't know that they want to do that either, but there are some serious ripple effects of moving one game to Week 18 because for the two teams involved, for every game they play the rest of the way, there is no wiggle room. And then you may end up having to decide between games that will get played, won't get played, who gets prioritized, who finishes with 15, who gets 16, and it just becomes a huge mess for the NFL. I think that's one of the big reasons why they've resisted kicking any games to a Week 18.
Yeah, I know, and that's why that they're going to try and tell the Ravens hold up, hold up until at least dinner time before you can walk through and then get on a plane tomorrow, even though apparently it's supposed to snow in Pittsburgh on Tuesday in the morning. I mean, there might actually be travel issues now on top of all of it. And then there's the issue of the 49ers. Even if they bubble up, they might not be able to bubble up in their hometown. They might be, on the road essentially for the first few weeks of December right up until Christmas time. What's the status of all that right now, Mike?
Well, I was told yesterday that the 49ers wanted to today talk to the officials in Santa Clara County and see if there's any way to stick handle their way around this rule that essentially prevents them from playing at their home stadium. Can they get an exception? Is there an exemption, a dispensation, anything? If that doesn't work, Arizona looks like the place. When the schedule came out in May, one of the first things I noticed, because I knew that the California teams could have an issue, I started cross-referencing schedules. It's like, hey, Arizona's no problem. There would never be a conflict with the Cardinals. Never a game that's due to be played on the same day between the 49ers and Cardinals at home. So I think Arizona is the winner. But, this issue with telling guys on a team, part of a unionized workforce, you got to go live in a hotel for the rest of the season, that's not something that the NFL just automatically gets to do. The union is going to have a say in that, and that's an issue that's going to have to be worked out pretty quickly because the 49ers have a home game, air quotes home game, next Monday night against the Buffalo Bills.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, I know you're a big pop culture guy, and this is a big pop culture place, so let's you'll follow me here. If losing your first 11 games is basically the football god's version of ordering a code red, and Adam Gase is Santiago, why is Santiago, despite the code red being ordered, not touched? When you see what Detroit's done, you've seen what Atlanta's done, you've seen what Houston's done. What is going on in that situation?
Well, look, there are wild cards, and we've talked about this before, and the biggest wild card, I think, is owner Woody Johnson. He's going to be back at some point. We don't know when Colonel Jessup is going to be taking the witness stand, but he will be back. And I think everything is kind of on hold for now. But one of the realities, I think, at play here, and we've heard people say, well, with the pandemic, the coaching searches are going to be complicated. I think that's one of the reasons why teams are getting an early start. If you know it's going to be complicated because of the pandemic, then get rolling now. Start doing your work now. Do all your background work now and be ready to go when January rolls around. So I just don't know what's going on with the Jets. I don't know if they're holding out hope that somehow they win a few games and it justifies bringing everyone back. I don't know how Joe Douglas fits into all of this. Everyone assumes he'd be back if Gase is gone. But the reality is Douglas was sort of handpicked by Gase once Mike McCagnon was run out of town, and Douglas is on the record saying Gase isn't the problem. So I don't think they know what they want to do. And the fact that they don't have fans present to show up wearing the bags, and we talked about this last time, I think, you know, that gives them the ability to play out the string. I assume when the string is played out, it's going to end. But with all these teams now embarking early on their searches for a new coach, every day that goes by makes it, as a practical matter, harder and harder for the Jets. So I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. I'm not sure the Jets know what's going on, and we just have to sit back and see how it all unfolds.
So then why did the Lions make their moves over the weekend, do you think?
Well, the last two games were unacceptable. That's what owner Sheila Ford Hamp said. They were embarrassed and shut out for the first time in the Matthew Stafford era by the Panthers and an XFL quarterback. And then the NFL Houston quarterback. It was the XFL Houston quarterback one week. The NFL Houston quarterback ripped them apart the next week, and that was that. And Saturday afternoon, out of the blue, although everyone was kind of expecting it, both Patricia and Quinn out. And people were surprised by Quinn. But look, Quinn was the guy who showed up fully intent on hiring Patricia, but waiting until there was an opening to fire Jim Caldwell instead of firing him right out of the gates. The problem is Caldwell made the playoffs one year. The next year he was above 500. That raises the bar for Patricia, and they never were able to win enough games to get past that ghost of Jim Caldwell, and I think that brought everyone down, and now yet again they hit the reset button in Detroit, and we'll see if they can find somebody who can come in and finally turn this thing around.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what are you hearing about, again, tonight's game? Doug Peterson was like, it's Wentz. If I go to Hurts, that indicates that the season's over. Then in the middle of last week, there was a little bit of wiggle room suddenly created when he introduced some conditional phrasing when asked if Wentz was his quarterback, and he said, I would think so. And now Hurts, we're hearing, took some snaps with the ones over the weekend. Are we going to see Jalen Hurts significantly tonight, do you think?
I think Peterson's starting to get some heat from above. I was surprised by the report from Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer over the weekend that last Sunday, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the team, skipped the game in Cleveland out of frustration with the team. And I want to say to everyone connected to the organization and all the fans in Philly, you still have a Super Bowl trophy that wasn't minted all that long ago. But I just feel like for a lot of those folks, getting a taste of a championship created a sense where they want to be in contention far more often. And they're sticking with Carson Wentz, or at least they have stuck with Carson Wentz, because they are stuck with Carson Wentz at least through 2021. He's got $25 million for next year. No one's going to touch that in trade. Not even a Brock Osweiler trade is going to get that deal done where they give somebody draft picks to get Wentz off their hands. $25 million on a cap that's likely going to be $175, and they just got to make it work. And my guess is everybody's on the hot seat next year. Get through this year as best you can. Try to make a late push like last year. They were 5-7 before they woke up, won their last 4 games, and won the division. I don't know. Maybe that happens this year. But the difference was Carson Wentz had it last year. He doesn't have it this year. It'll be interesting to see if they see Jalen Hurts on the field tonight and how much, whether it makes a difference, whether that wakes up Carson Wentz. I still feel like he is trying in one fell swoop to justify everything that they've done that shows faith in him, from trading up to draft him, to picking him over Nick Foles, to giving him the big contract. I feel like he thinks with one play, with one decision, with one moment, he can make it all right. And I just think he's trying too hard to make the Eagles look good for riding with him as long as they have. And it just feels like next year it's going to be make or break for Carson Wentz.
Well, I mean, you're more attuned to the dollars and cents than I am, Mike. You know, I'm more of a narrative, big picture guy when I do my job. So I'll ask you this. Is there any comparison where, you know, in this era, this new era, if you will, where best player out of college becomes the highest paid player in the history of the franchise ever since they changed that we saw somebody drafted high gets paid. They do win the Super Bowl in the window in which he was on his first contract, but he wasn't the one who won it, does get paid, and then within a year regresses to the point where you're wondering if he's even viable. This is new, right? Since they changed the draft rules in terms of the contracts and who gets paid what. This is like a unicorn, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, usually with a franchise quarterback, you know early that he's going to be a franchise quarterback, and once he reaches that level, he's always there. You have it or you don't, and you don't have it and then lose it, and that's what's so weird. It's the Steve Blass all of a sudden losing his control. That takes us way back.
Good baseball
back when I actually cared about baseball. But that doesn't happen to quarterbacks. That's why it's always such a safe investment, relatively speaking, in comparison to other positions. You know, you pay a running back, you don't know what's going to happen. Pay a receiver, you don't know what's going to happen. Pay a defensive lineman, you don't know what's going to happen. Pay a quarterback, he's just going to keep doing what he's done. No big deal. That's what makes it so stunning, and that's why I still think that one of these days, when you consider how cheap it is to go out and reload the cannon with a first-round quarterback, one of these teams is going to say to a guy who objectively is good enough, is going to say, sorry, we're just not doing it. Sorry. And we're not going to do the franchise tag dance like Washington did with Kirk Cousins. They did that 2 years before they let him walk. Just from the moment the contract expires, we're not in this. Or go hit the market. Go see what else is out there. And then after you see what else is out there, if you want to talk, maybe we'll talk. But I expect that to happen at some point. I thought it was going to happen with Jared Goff, frankly. I thought that's the direction the Rams were moving in, and based on yesterday's game, you could say maybe they should have moved in that direction. But between Goff and Wentz, back-to-back top of the 2016 draft, they both got paid, and I think there's reason to wonder whether those contracts should have been given out to both guys, even though Goff right now clearly performing significantly better than Wentz.
Mike, appreciate the time. Enjoy tonight's game. Let's chat before the holidays. Appreciate the call, as always.
All right, Rich. Take care, buddy.
That's Mike Florio. Check him out on PFT PM after Brother from Another. We take this network, NBC Sports on Peacock, to Brother from Another at 3 Eastern time, and then PFT PM with Mike at 5 Eastern. He starts it all off before Dan Patrick, who hands it off to us every single day on NBC Sports on Peacock. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.